See, before I go into my personal views, I would like to say a little bit about what India has been doing on this front.
Yes. Welcome, everyone, to another season of the Proof of Work podcast. I know it's been a while. I've been traveling for the past many months. Mr. Smarak Swain, who works for the Indian Revenue Office for the government of India.
So India had the presidency of G20 in last year, in 2023.
One of India's biggest crypto exchange, WazirX, has recently got hacked with a massive amount as well. In 2022, the FTX debacle happened, or the Terra Luna incident happened.
FTX or Terra Luna or WazirX, it's a problem of regulations. Do we mean regulation of virtual assets, or do we mean regulation of virtual asset service providers?
When you compare the WazirX hack and the magnitude of money that is involved,
I'm not aware about it unless we are talking about the Nirav Modi case, which was not a cybersecurity.
I'm not talking about those cases. Well, those cases are of course big financial frauds as well, as everybody in India knows about it.
Whenever something new comes, there are always vulnerabilities. There are always gaps, which can be misused or which can be.
And they always ended up as a Ponzi scheme. Those high yield opportunities. It's crazy, right? We've got a history of financial frauds. It's not like it's happened only in the 10, 20 years, and it's not like it's an India problem. It's a universal problem.
Now is the time for developing RegTech.
Okay, I agree. The New York Stock Exchange was formed in 1792.
And at one point of time, the network effects are going to become so strong that they're going to reach a threshold where they may reach a gold standard.
A lot of people do not take the time to actually read what is Bitcoin.
The size of the area which is outside the dollar network on today's date looks very big. It looks very big mostly because Russia is big. Russia is because the taxpayer is giving a lot of data about his income, about his wealth, about their income, their wealth, many data. Australia's tax database. I will know which are the people whose
Bitcoin or Ethereum. Welcome, everyone, to another season of the Proof of Work podcast. I know it's been a while. I've been traveling for the past many months, but it's been a very fulfilling journey meeting all viewers of the Proof of Work podcast in all the different countries out there. And during that time, I got a chance to meet new people, new frontiers in the space of blockchain and digital currencies. And it's my honor to welcome Mr. Smarak Swain, who works for the Indian Revenue Office for the government of India. And in the last 2 months, have become a very dear friend as well, with whom I collaborate and do a lot of thought pieces on the space of blockchain and digital currencies. So without further ado, a warm welcome to you, Smarak ji, on the Proof of Work podcast.
Namaste and welcome.
Thank you very much, Smarak ji, for taking out the time. I know how busy you get with all the work that you do for the government of India with FATF and so forth. Recently, you published your book, Digital Fortunes, which is your third book, right?
Yes. In a way, it's my third book for the general population. Before that, I used to write technical books. So yes, it is my third book.
Amazing. And look, I really today we're going to talk more about you firstly, because the Proof of Work audience needs to be exposed about you. And I've got a very multicultural audience. As you know, I'm an Indian Australian, so most of my audience is in Australia. A lot of it in India now that I teach in India, and some of them in US because of my education there. So it's a very multicultural audience. I think everybody in India knows you, but for the people outside India, outside the FATF world, they'll get to know who Smarak ji is at the course of discussion that we're going to have today. But sometime in the future, would really love to go deep down into your book, Havala Agent, as well. I think that's a fascinating book that you wrote. But we'll deep dive into future episodes. But today, Smarak ji, I want to start off by saying, especially since you're a very known figure in India, you've managed to balance a very demanding career, like the Indian civil services, or working for the Indian Revenue Service. It's a very demanding career. And you've written 3 books, as we just covered that. What does writing mean to you on a philosophical level, saying from one writer to another? And how does it contribute to your understanding of the world and your place in it?
Siv, if I may say this, writing is something that I have loved doing right from my childhood. My father is also a writer. He writes a lot, and I probably learned little bit of craft from him. But one thing I found about writing is that when I write something, I get a very different kind of satisfaction from there. I feel that I have communicated to a large number of people through my writing, which is true. But when I write, I also understand that I am introspecting a lot. So writing itself is a process of self discovery, as well as it is a process by which I connect with others. And in the process of writing, one more thing that I get to know is that I also learn a lot of things. Because whenever I want to build a narrative, whenever I have a narrative ready in my mind, and when I start writing about it, I find that there are some there are some holes. There's some holes in my narrative, and I start plugging those holes. So that is when I learn a lot more things in the process of writing. So on a philosophical level, I will say that it's about self-discovery and also about learning new things.
Amazing. So when did you first was it during your primary school or was it during your university? Like, when did you start writing those short stories or those factual thought pieces?
I would say, as far back as I can remember, I started writing, small snippets about astronomy. That was a hobby that I had when I was in class 3, 4, class 3,
Yeah.
class 4, class 5. And I started writing small snippets about astronomy, about various constellations, about stars, galaxies. I used to publish them in school magazines, and also I used to participate in some of the creative writing competitions. So that's how it started. And then when I was preparing for the civil service examinations, I started writing a book. It was a textbook back then. I wrote a textbook on psychology, because psychology was one of my topics for the civil service examination. That book is still doing very well. So there was a proper textbook. That was not a mainstream book, but it's still doing pretty well. I'm happy when I see that book even now. So that's how it happened for me.
Is it true that textbooks sell better in India than those mainstream books?
Yes, indeed. Textbooks sell much better in India than mainstream books. One thing I'll tell you about the entire publishing industry per se, about
Yes.
textbooks as well as mainstream books.
Yeah.
The thing is that in India, a lot of the piracy laws are there in India, and enforcement is happening in India. But the evasion of those enforcement is also pretty high in India, due to which publishers are always under a lot of pressure to keep the margin to keep their book prices low. So if the price of a book goes beyond 500 rupees or 600 rupees Indian rupees, then there's a chance that pirated editions will start making rounds.
Got it.
Both in the case of textbook and in the case of mainstream books. Now,
Yeah.
in the case of textbooks, there are some niche areas like accountancy, medicine, in which you can price a book at 5,000 rupees Indian rupees, which would be about $60
Yeah.
or so. Otherwise, there's always a pressure to keep the price of the book low at 450 to 500 Indian rupees, or there is a chance of piracy happening. Secondly, textbooks, because in India, English is not the first language. So if you write a mainstream book in a vernacular language, in any of the vernacular languages, there's an equal chance of selling as an English book. But in the
Oh,
case of textbooks, because higher secondary, because college, because
yeah.
college education mostly happens in English in India. So the base, the reader base for textbooks is naturally higher.
Got it.
for English textbooks.
Understood. Thanks. That's a very useful insight for me because I know that my book didn't necessarily did well in India when I came over here in 2022. Maybe it's because of the price, and maybe because it's kind of like mainstream. But you mentioned about college, Smarakji. You did engineering, so you are a very multifaceted person. You got interest in astronomy when you were a kid, and then you wrote a textbook on psychology, you did an Indian Civil Services exam, aced it, got into IRS, and you did your engineering in your undergrad. Uh, how did your engineering influence your approach in policy making and writing, which eventually became your career and your postgrad as well?
Um, that's an interesting question. Mm, so if we talk about how engineering affected my writing, I will say that I have been writing both fiction and non-fiction. At least I'm
Yeah,
trying to dabble in both fiction and
yeah,
non-fiction. I will say that engineering, a technical education, a purely technical education, actually hampers uh, uh, your writing fiction, because in
got it.
fiction what you do is that you develop characters, and human characters, they are all flawed characters. Every character is flawed. We behave in
Yes,
ways which are irrational and illogical, but still we behave in those ways. Whereas
yes,
an engineering background helps me in understanding things in a very logical way. So when I first started, developing a good work of fiction, what I realized is that almost all the characters are behaving in very predictable ways. Even now, I feel that in my works of fiction, uh, many of the characters, they behave in very predictable ways, in very logical ways. Why? Because of my engineering background. I've been trying to diverse myself from the engineering background, from the engineering tutelage, for the purpose of writing fiction.
got it.
Having said that, for writing narrative non-fictions, it has helped me a lot, because having a technical background where everything is empirical, where the tutelage is empirical, where there's a lot of focus on data driven and evidence driven work, where there's a lot of focus on arriving at conclusions very logically. It's pretty easy to write non-fiction, and it's very easy to write very strong and impactful non-fiction, if I may say so. So those are the pros and cons of an engineering background, from my perspective. Now, in policy, in policy work, what I've seen is that now there are some policies which are regular policies, and there's some policies you make for new technologies. Okay.
Yep.
So whenever you make policies for new technologies, or whenever you want to assess the risk from new technologies, an engineering background always helps, because you have developed that aptitude and also that attitude to understand technology from various angles. And also because many of your friends are in the industry, it's very easy for you to sit with them for a cup of tea, or for coffee, and then pick on their brains, to keep yourself abreast with what is happening in the world of technology. And there's a
Yeah,
general sense of understanding that yes, technology drives change, technology drives society, and so there's a reverence for technology. Uh,
got
well, that is an attitudinal thing uh, which many people who are not from engineering background may not have. I'm saying that
it.
many do have, but some do
Yeah,
not have.
yeah, yeah. Look, that's a good point, sir. Like, yeah, the logical reasoning and the quantitative aptitude that comes by the rigorous training that one gets in a 4-year engineering degree, especially in a country like India, which is so competitive. Whichever engineering college that you get into, really helps in future. But like you said, when it comes to creative writing, can act as a barrier as well. So very balanced response that I think people can relate to it in a way. Now, sir, you came from a very humble beginning, if I can say so. You came from a small town, and now you're at a very influential position in the country of India. What has been the most, as everybody's journey, there would have been some aspects in life where it would have been very emotionally challenging. And with that, now that you see yourself as a successful individual, uh, I do not know whether you see yourself as that, because you're a very humble person, the more that I got to know you. But from the outside, one can say that you've achieved a lot in your life, considering from where you came with your sheer hard work and grit. How has this success affected your relationships and sense of self in the present state?
Sif, if I may make a reference, I would like to refer to this book called Accelerating India's Development by Karthik Muralidharan. What he says is something very interesting. He says that India's bureaucracy is a very exclusive bureaucracy. At least the higher bureaucracy, it is exclusive. It is extremely exclusive. Most of the entrants into the higher bureaucracy come through one single examination called the Indian Civil Service. Unlike in many of the countries in the West, where lateral entry is the norm, here in India, lateral entry is the exception. So the only option for you to work in the higher bureaucracy is to give the civil service examination and to get a rank. Okay. Now, what had happened is I had chosen to give this examination. I had spent my time and efforts in giving this examination, and I cleared it. So I get a lot of opportunities, work-wise, and I get a lot of work-related experiences, lot of challenging assignments because I cleared that examination. Now, when I cleared that examination, public at large, the people at large in India, they realized that I have cleared a major examination and I have got into a Group A service, we call it, the Indian Revenue Service. So that is a time when I had seen some of the other people who had cleared the examination getting overwhelmed by this, by the idea that they have cleared this examination and they have got into a Group A service, be it Indian Revenue Service or Indian Administrative Service or Indian Police Service. The trick is to remain grounded. The trick is to remain grounded and to remain in touch with your roots. Because of the hierarchical nature of Indian bureaucracy, many people do not stay in touch with their roots, with their relatives, with their friends from childhood. I have been consciously thinking about it, and I have consciously tried to remain in touch with everyone, and that actually helps me in my career also, because every time a new assignment comes for me in the government of India, because I'm a public servant. I'm actually a public servant, and I have to serve people. I do know the people I have to serve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a beautiful answer, sir. So I very much, you're the first person that have actually used the term public servant since I've come to India, and I truly believe that one of the best methods of leadership is the servant leadership. And that is something that I also exercise. I exercise through different ways by involving myself in academia and transferring or sharing the knowledge and experience that I've got in the digital assets world globally in US and Australia, and share it with my audience. So while I exercise servant leadership through other methods, but I believe that one of the best forms of leadership style is the servant leadership. And yes, you're right. Like, one of the, I guess, whatever country it is, if you get into civic duties, your job is to basically serve the people. And that means that you are a public servant. So very aptly said. And I can vouch, having known Smarakji for a few months now, Smarakji is a very humble individual. He's very generous he's very generous in helping you with getting to introduce you to individuals. He really wants to know about what's happening outside India as well, so that he can help improve India, accelerate to a $10 trillion economy in his own way. So very grounded person. I can vouch for that for Smarakji. Thanks a lot. That was a very measured and very emotional response. Now, Smarakji, you have worked a lot in your capacity in investigating financial frauds. and you've likely seen the devastating impact that these financial frauds have towards its victims as well. Can you share a story that particularly moved you and how it has influenced your approach to policy and writing, since you are in the position to make meaningful impacts in the policy making space after being exposed to, the financial frauds that have happened in the system and what impact it does towards its victims?
Well, see, first I'll start with a disclaimer. See, because as part of the government of India, I'm not supposed to reveal details about, finer details about investigations.
Yes.
But of course, I'm free to talk about things which are there in the public domain.
Yes, please.
So some of the financial frauds, a large number of financial frauds in India are in the nature of investment frauds, Ponzi schemes or pyramid schemes, and you must have heard about people committing suicide, victims committing suicide after being defrauded by Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes. Now, going a step forward, we are seeing that there has been in recent times there has been a rise in cybercrime incidences. There has been significant rise in cybercrime incidences. These are mostly because of two reasons. One is the proliferation of fast payment systems. Like, for example, in developing countries, there is a race for increasing financial inclusion, for taking the banking facilities to the doorstep of the poor man, of the man without banking access, due to which fast payment systems are proliferating. Now, when fast payment systems proliferate, there is a it comes with a high risk of cyber crimes happening. Second is because of cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrencies help you move value across borders without any check, without any monitoring. So, in many of the most economies, cybercrime has also escalated because of cryptocurrencies. What you must have seen is that, again, there are many kinds of cybercrime. There is extortion, there is picturing scams, or there are many stock market scams. We see that a large proportion of monies which are being which are being lost in cybercrime, they pertain to investment frauds. Okay, they pertain to investment frauds, and recently I came across this one case which actually shocked me. This case is of something called cyber slavery. Now, cyber slavery is something that happens on the borders of some Southeast Asian countries, and maybe in some Southeast Asian countries where the law enforcement may not be very, very strong, may not be as strong as is in other countries. So what happens typically is that they would come to India, they will advertise in India, asking for people interested in working for them. They would promise a very good return. They would say that if you work for us, we'll give you about 100,000 Indian rupees per month, and they'll try to identify unemployed youth who can very easily be lured into this, and then they will take this youth to one of those countries where proper call centers are running. They will imprison this youth in those call centers, and they'll make this youth work in those call centers for scamming, for resorting to scams, cyber scams. It's a very elaborate strategy that happens. They are imprisoned, and then they are given targets for conducting investment frauds. So there are two kinds of victims here: the victim of the human trafficking and the victim of the cyber fraud. But these victims, the victims of the human trafficking, some of them are treated really badly. Some of them are forced to get into. Some of them are forced into prostitution. A few of them may be even forced into. A few of them are brutally and physically manhandled. Sometimes electric shock treatment is also given to some people who refuse to follow the rules made in those slave enclaves or in those centers. And this is something which is actually increasing with time as the number of cybercrime cases are increasing, as the avenues for cybercrime are increasing all over the world. And this is something which
wow.
actually moved me. Uh, this is actually something which brought chills in me. I have seen
Yeah.
financial fraud happening. I've seen victims, and I have been, these victims. These are people who have lost their money, and losing money is one thing. But here, these are people who feel trapped, who feel that they have been enslaved. That is something very much more harrowing, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, you're telling me, and I still feel that, wow, that happens. I wouldn't have guessed. You're saying that this happens mostly in the Southeast Asian countries where people from India get trapped with the hope that they're going to get a better salary. They go through proper channels, as in they get their visa to work over there. But once they go over there, their visa might be taken by the employers. And then it's like a sweatshop of call centers where they are told to do this. Because their visa is with the employers, they can't do anything. They're dependent on them in a new country. So it happens mostly in that Southeast Asian blocks.
Yes.
Wow.
And you'll see that happening mostly on the border areas, border of two Southeast Asian countries, where policing and law enforcement activities are not very strong, or in some ACZ, inside which the law enforcement action and policing is not strong in these countries.
Wow, Smarakji, that's like a very chilling incident that you've mentioned, that human trafficking also gets involved into cyber crimes and financial frauds. I do want to still cover a little bit on the financial fraud, which is quite evident, at least in my time of being over here, the few years that I've observed in India. One is, of course, the influence of social media, where anybody who's got a following, whether they are comedians or, interviewers or journalists with no training in economics or finance, start giving out financial advice. And I've noticed that, and by the way, I think it's not just an India problem. This happens in US as well. So whatever we are seeing when it comes to the effect of social media influencers who are actually not giving education, but are giving stock tips in the disguise that they are, providing financial education. Because providing financial education, as a financial educator myself, and you would resonate to it, is telling you frameworks, teaching you frameworks on how to invest, but not necessarily telling you which stocks to invest in. But a lot of times when you open social media, you've got these very famous social media influencers who actually give you week by week commentary on what stocks to buy. And that is financial advice. That's not financial education. Financial education is purely teaching you frameworks on how to invest or trade, which are probabilistic and not guaranteed, unlike a lot of these, clickbait thumbnails and titles that come. And then the other part is, I've come to know that there is still things like chit funds in India. I'm not sure whether they still exist or not. And that was a new concept that I wasn't necessarily aware of. So I would love if you can delve a little bit on, the social media influencer who actually gives stock tips rather than financial education, whether it is true that this is a pandemic in some way. And secondly, about the chit funds, as to what it is and whether do we still see a lot of chit fund scams in India?
Okay. So to answer the first part of your question on finfluencers, I mean
Yes.
the people you described, they are basically called finfluencers,
Yes.
financial influencers. Yes, they are becoming a problem in India, but and the problem of following influencers is not lost on anybody, because they are influencers and people look up to them when they make any financial advice, especially specific financial advice, then people naturally tend to follow them. And there's a possibility that they are rigging the system. Okay, and there's no regulation on them. Okay, that's a reality, and that is increasingly becoming a social problem, I would say. But that is not exactly a fraud. That is not exactly a fraud. It becomes a fraud when the influencer is saying something which is untrue, which is factually untrue. Or let's say the influencer has been, so to say, hired by someone to say something, and the influencer is not making it clear that he's making a stock market tip based on money that he has taken. If he's doing that, then it is cheating under section 420 of Indian Penal Code. I will not go into the equivalent section in the new law, and so that is clearly cheating. But in case of influencer is making specific stock tips based on his own ideas or based on his own predictions, it is actually not it is actually not illegal, so to say, as of now.
Sure.
There are talks about there are talks in the open forum about regulating influencers or licensing influencers. I do not know if a licensing happens, how it will happen. And there's a risk that the entire industry may go underground if a licensing happens. It doesn't make much sense because influencers operate through social media. So how do you license them also? That is also a problem. So probably some kind of a guidance is required for them, for influencers who are not influenced by external parties, but are making stock market tips, but I'm giving stock market advisories. Now coming to the second part on cheat funds.
Yes.
Now, what you call cheat funds? So cheat funds, how they operate is very simple. The cheat funds are basically funds which are either not registered with any government or which are registered with a specific state government as price cheats. Okay. However, traditionally speaking, these cheat funds have been misused for running Ponzi schemes. What happens is I'll get hold of 100 people. I'll take cheats from them. There'll be some amount of money that we'll be depositing every month. There'll be a monthly deposit of about 6,000 or 8,000 rupees, 8,000 Indian rupees, small amounts per month from people who do not have access to the banking channel. And I'll promise that they'll be getting some basic returns. And in case they win a kind of a lottery or kind of a game, it depends. It varies from model to model. If they win some kind of a game or a lottery, then they'll get a higher return. So that is the plain vanilla cheat fund that we know about. But many cheat funds started coming, which were in the nature of Ponzi schemes. So they will promise very high returns because they want people to invest a lot of money. So they will promise very high returns, and the returns will be promised in a very strategic way. That is, after 2 years, you'll be getting the return either in the form of gold coin or specific grams of gold coin, or you'll get your initial principal back with this much amount of interest. Okay, and then and then a very systematic Ponzi scheme goes on in the name of cheat funds. So in 1978, what happened is a new law came. Not a new law now. At that time, it was a new law called Price and Money Circulation Schemes. Price Cheats and Money Circulation Schemes Banning Act 1978. It was a weird law because it said that if you're paying the interest to your older investors using the principal from the newer investors, then that is banned in India. So you cannot pay interest of older investors using the principal of the newer investors. That is simply speaking, that is what a Ponzi scheme is.
That's a Ponzi scheme.
But it is not as simple as that, because a Ponzi scheme can be then colored in a very different way. Okay. Sure. So since 1978, after 1978, when the next spurt of Ponzi schemes started coming in India, that happened in 1980s and 1990s, when when a PACL case came up, many of those timber cases came up, in which someone will promise you very high returns if you invest in a timber farm somewhere in a very remote area in India. Okay, so when these things came up, what they did is that they colored it in a different fashion so that it doesn't look like a chit fund. Okay, but when they spoke with the investor, they explained to the investor that it is a chit fund. They told the investor that it is chit fund because the investor understands chit fund. But when they explained to the authorities, what they sold to the authorities was basically a corporate wheel. They told the authorities that we are into real estate business, or we are into plantations, or we are into gold business. That is how they colored their scheme. And it was very difficult to prove that they are Ponzi schemes till the time they go bust.
When you mentioned about timberland, it's the same. That same industry is used in US as well. There's guys that they don't have chit funds in US or in Australia, but in US they call it high yield opportunities, where they promise a guaranteed return of 27 to 28% if you invest in timberlands and the lumberjack industry and all. And in Australia, because Australia is a mining economy, they are like, especially in Perth, which is the mining capital. Western Australia is the mining capital of Australia. And over there, in Australia, the high yield opportunity, or the chit funds equivalent of Ponzi schemes that operate in Australia, is we've got lease over a mining site, and a lot of gold or aluminium or other diamond deposits are there. It's near the BHP and Rio Tinto sites. So it's a high yield, guaranteed 27, 28% opportunity. And in Australia and US, as you know, interest rates are so low. They have increased in the last 2 years. But back in the day, for a whole 10 to 15 years, it was so low that anybody who used to see guaranteed 27 to 28%, they didn't used to read the fine print. They used to look at the advertisement, or their salesmen, when they used to do the seminars in every state, they used to just sign up for it. And they always ended up as a Ponzi scheme, those high yield opportunities. It's crazy, right? We've got a history of financial frauds. It's not like it's happened only in the 10, 20 years, and it's not like it's an India problem. It's a universal problem, which has got a history of 400, 500 years, ever since the tulip bubble that happened. And still, the inner desire of human being, which is to, greed and to get short-term high returns, people still leverage that, and people still fall victim to it. The psychologist in you, what does that tell you about human psychology?
I don't know. It tells that probably greed is I won't call it greed. I would say that probably dreams. Okay, good dreams are some things that cannot be resisted. So when you see a good dream, you just want to go and grab it. And if it is too good to be true, then all the better it is. I remember this one book that R.K. Narayan. I do not know how many of your audience in US and Australia have read R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan in 1952 had written a book called The Financial Expert. Okay. That book was on a pyramid scheme. It was not exactly a pyramid scheme. Yeah, it was a Ponzi scheme. It was a proper Ponzi scheme, if I remember well.
Yeah.
Now, in that book also, he has he has mentioned how people went crazy about it. What's the situation that you are in? Okay, if you are in too much of a rut, then then you start believing in dreams too much. If you are in a good situation, probably you will take dreams with a pinch of salt. But if you are in a rut, or if you are going through a downtime in your life, or if you are going through some lows in your life, you want to believe in dreams even more at that point of time. So times of unemployment, times of, for example, COVID-19, times of crisis, these are the times when these schemes, they sell much, much more than normal times. So probably
Got it.
this shows us how human psychology works here.
Wow, I never thought about it this way. The correlation uh, that if you are down, you dream or hope for more, and you start believing in more unrealistic things. And if you're doing well, you're kind of like more realistic. I never connected that inverse correlation in that, but that's interesting. That's a book I'll definitely read now. I'm very fond of old books because I feel like those old books that are highly referenced and recommended by individuals such as yourself is probably more prevalent of what the current society is, because those far-sighted visionaries or thinkers actually knew at that time where the society is heading to. So I'll definitely take your recommendation and read it. Talking about far-sighted, we both got connected because of our interest and involvement in the digital assets industry. And I would be doing an injustice, especially for our Proof of Work podcast viewers that are mostly in the digital asset space, that we don't talk about financial frauds that happen in cryptocurrencies. And you've alluded a little bit to it. Focusing on, I want to still make it a universal topic and not just point India at this stage. But I want to get your reaction when in 2022 the FTX debacle happened, or the Terra Luna incident happened, which happened in a space of few months only. Terra Luna happened in May 2022. FTX, the genesis of it started happening in October of 2022 when their Alameda sister concern hedge fund report came out, and it unraveled that it could be a Ponzi scheme, and that eventually affected the FTX exchange as well. So between May till November, both Terra Luna and FTX debacle happened. And now we are seeing that one of India's biggest crypto exchange, WazirX, has recently got hacked with a massive amount as well. FTX, Terra Luna, and what's happened with WazirX, the space is now 2 years between those two. What is your reflection about these cryptocurrency financial frauds, with given reference to Terra Luna, FTX, and specifically for India, what needs to be happen so that there is investor protection, even if it's with a foreign cryptocurrency like Terra Luna that might be available through Indian exchanges, or hacks that happen with Indian crypto exchanges as well?
See, before I go into my personal views, I'd like to say a little bit about what India has been doing on this front.
Yes.
So India had the presidency of G20 in last year in 2023. That was the time when India pushed for coming out with global regulations, global common regulations or global common framework for regulating cryptocurrencies. Okay. Why India did it is probably because G20 is the leadership. It is the highest leadership forum in the world. So a lot of things get driven through G20 because all the major countries of the world are members of G20, and India was successful to some extent. I believe there was an IMF FSB synthesis paper on how to regulate cryptocurrencies. I will use the word cryptocurrencies, digital assets. How to regulate digital assets. Okay. So there's some thought process going on in that direction. But now I'll come to my personal view, because when I analyze this in greater detail, what I realize is that when we are talking about regulating, because all of this is a problem of regulation. All these problems that are coming in the case of FTX or Terra Luna or WazirX, it's a problem of regulations. But when we talk about regulating the virtual asset sector, what we actually mean? Do we mean regulation of virtual assets, or do we mean regulation of virtual asset service providers? Virtual assets or virtual asset service providers? A third question is, do we also mean regulation of the algorithms? Because none of the standard regulators, because most of the FIs are regulated by specific regulators. There's a central bank regulating banks. There's a stock exchange, the commission or a securities exchange board, which is regulating the stock market. There's an insurance board which is regulating insurance market. Okay, but there's no one who is regulating algorithms. Now, if you think about it, what happened in the FTX case? In the FTX case, there was a related party transaction between FTX and Alameda. That related party transaction was not very evident because it happened in the gap of a tweak in the algorithm. So the algorithm provided some margin money to some of the traders, and that margin money had a cap. Okay, so in the case of Alameda, that cap was removed, due to which Alameda was able to withdraw a lot of crypto assets, digital assets from FTX exchange, and that is how it happened. In the case of Terra Luna, again it was an algorithm. It was an algorithmic stable coin. Okay.
Yeah.
In the case of WazirX, again there is a smart contract here. If you look at the WazirX case in detail, till now not many details are out in the public, but from whatever is out in the public, we understand that there are multi-signatory there are wallets with
Multi-sig
controlled by
wallets. Yeah.
multi-sig wallets, which is again they are in the public forum, and for controlling them there are smart contracts. Okay. Now, who has been regulating contracts? Contracts have been regulated by the courts. In the case of smart contracts, in theory, there's no need for a regulator. Because these are complete contracts. Unlike traditional contracts, which are incomplete contracts, where there's a need for an interpretation, these are complete contracts. But even in complete contracts, what are the standards that should be adhered to? We do not know that. Okay, and there have been no standards. There is no standard-making body for algorithms.
Yeah.
So, for example, FATF is a standard-making body for AML safety. So they came out with AML safety standards for virtual asset service providers. There is no standard for algorithms for how to design the algorithms for smart contracts. There is no arbitrator for these. Maybe there's no requirement for an arbitrator, but I think there may be a requirement for an arbitrator, at least to maintain the quality, at least to oversee whether quality is being maintained. And the entire administration happens through algorithms. Earlier in traditional economy, if you look at any bank, the administration is physical, so the central bank can always give directions to the bank about how the administration has to happen. Which are the matters which have to go to the board of directors for approval. Okay, because here it is hyper technical and a lot of processes are completely automated, which is the advantage of crypto assets. Okay.
Yeah.
A traditional regulator cannot get into this. Okay. So I feel that there is a need for three things. One is a regulator for the virtual assets. Number two, a regulator for the service providers, the exchanges and the brokers. And number three, probably a standard making body or a supervisor for the algorithm per se. Okay. Now bringing all of this together, and there are many people who do not even have an understanding of this, that this is what is required. Okay.
Yeah.
So the understanding is also evolving. And because the understanding is evolving, the regulation or the supervision is patchwork in most of the countries. When I look at the supervision in many countries, what I see is that those countries which have proactively brought in supervision, most of them have brought in only AML safety supervision. Why? Because of FATF standards. Some of them have also brought in prudential supervision, which is one step ahead. Some of them have, in some countries, the Securities and Exchange Board, they have made rules for the ICOs, initial coin offerings, because through ICO you are raising money from the public. Okay. So there has been some patchwork. But a proper comprehensive regulation, if you look at it, even if we look at the system, the norms in Japan, let's say, or the new law or the new code in US, which has still not been made, which has still not been passed into action. In these, we do not see much of a much of our work on the finer nuances. Many of these frauds are happening because the algorithm can easily be tweaked. Okay, because smart contracts are things which are hyper technical. Software engineers understand smart contracts, but lawyers do not understand smart contracts.
Yes.
So because there is a digital divide here, so many of these things are happening. So probably when a supervisor comes, it has to be as grand as crypto assets are, as digital assets are. Um, uh, that's
Yeah.
generally my point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. When it comes to comprehensive regulations for crypto, uh, no country necessarily has nailed it. You are right. I think it started with firstly standardizing the AML laws for the virtual asset service providers, uh, creating some sort of a body. I think at the moment it's only the UAE that has got a dedicated body that regulates virtual assets. The rest of the countries, which includes Australia, US, Canada, they all have either given that responsibility to an existing body, whether it's the commodities regulators in the US, the CFTC, or the Securities Exchange Board equivalent SEC. Same thing in Australia. It could be the ASIC. At the moment, we're not sure in Australia who would it be because they haven't set the standards. So you are right. And I really like how you have differentiated it into three areas: the regulation of virtual assets, the regulation of virtual asset service providers, and the regulation of algorithms. I think the regulation of algorithms is going to be really tough because it's such a niche field that even within the software engineering talent pool, not everybody would know languages such as Solidity for Ethereum or Rust for Solana, that they can create an informed opinion. And I know, being in the industry, that there are so many security contracts auditors that give certification before a decentralized application goes live, that, hey, we have certified that these smart contracts are, 100% secure. And then we see that somebody comes up and they exploit it. In some cases, in my experience, there are certain these security auditors, like in the traditional finance world, there are auditors where you can bribe them and get an auditing statement in your, in your favor. Similarly, in the decentralized finance or this crypto world, there are these security auditors that audit these smart contracts who you can bribe, and they can tell you that it's 100% certified. But then there are some really good security auditing agency that, despite their best efforts, give the rating, and hackers are still able to exploit it. The WazirX investigation is happening, so we're yet to see, what really happened there. But in terms of the gravity, I know that in Australia, for example, we haven't had a hack for a crypto exchange, for an Australian crypto exchange of this magnitude. I believe the WazirX hack is of 200 million US dollars. In Australia, we haven't had such a big hack. We've had these sort of hacks in Korea, Japan, and all. When you compare the WazirX hack and the magnitude of money that is involved to a non-crypto financial sector, is this a big cybersecurity incident for a financial exchange in India, or there has been other big cybersecurity incidents where money has been taken either through a bank or through others in India, or this is a isolated massive incident?
Well, if you look at the trends, okay, cyber crimes, they happen in small values. Most of the cyber crimes, they happen in small values. If we are talking about cyber crimes per se, but if
Yes.
you put together all the cyber crimes that have been happening from a single call center, the amounts are huge for some of the cyber crimes. Like for example, there was one group which was operating from Sabi Khampur area of New Delhi. It's a small village enclave with inside New Delhi, and there was a call center operating from there, which was defrauding a lot of innocent victims in Europe, in US, in Canada, even in Australia. uh, if I recall, yes, even in Australia. And the Austrian police, they reached out to a CBI in India, and through Interpol, and they worked together to uh, to to, to identify this call center. And the amount involved was substantial. The total amount, if you say, involved was substantial. From each victim, they used to take a small amount of money. Okay.
Got
So
it.
the total amount would be, I would say, about 1,100 crores will be 1,000 million Indian rupees, which will be about 12 to 13 million US dollars per call center.
Yeah.
There's so many call centers operating. So if you
Yeah.
put together all the figures of cybercrime, it is much more than this figure, the single hack. But yeah, as a single hack scope, or as a single scan goes, this is too big.
Yeah.
There's,
Wow.
I won't say any comparable cybercrime incident which can compare with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, I do not know the intricate details about this, but when this incident happened, and being a teacher in digital assets in India, uh, I, of course, get affected as an educator personally because I believe in the crypto industry. I believe in the merits of it. Of course, I'll go on record, and I'll always go on record in saying that when you go to websites like CoinGecko, you see that there are 14,000 crypto coins listed across the crypto world. 99.9% are probably, doesn't have any value. So most of them are scams, and 99.9% probably don't have any intrinsic value. But some of them have got really good merits. And that's why, I believe in this industry, because of that 0.1% of the assets that are listed that actually have got incredible, unique, innovative properties to it that could change humanity in certain ways. But not going to that. So when these hacks happen that are, isolated to crypto exchanges, it affects me, and it becomes my responsibility in a way as an educator to teach that what happened over here at the end of the day was not necessarily the innovation's fault. It was more so that there was some human elements involved into it that were either corrupt or negligible in their, I guess, upkeep of security and stuff. In India, I had heard that in 2018, there was a cybersecurity incident with Punjab National Bank as well, where probably towards the tunes of $1.77 billion were taken out. I believe that might have got recovered, but I do not know the details. Is that correct that in 2018, PNB had a cybersecurity incident at the tunes of $1 billion?
I'm not aware about it, unless we are talking about the Nirav Modi case, which was not a cybersecurity.
No, I'm not talking about those cases. Well, those cases are of course big financial frauds as well, as everybody in India knows about it. I
They
know
are
that
big financial frauds, and a lot
aware
of
it.
cases were unraveled in the decade between 2010 and 2020.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
But I do not know about any cybersecurity fraud that happened with the PNB. I'm not aware
got
about
it.
it. Just slipped.
I read it somewhere, so I'll share some details about it maybe later after the episode with you. But yeah, I guess what I just wanted to point it out to the viewers is that cybersecurity hacks happen, even with banks. I guess the benefit of banks are that because it's a centralized messaging system, Swift and everything else, they are able to recover the money through cybersecurity frauds comparatively easily, as opposed to the crypto exchanges, because of the decentralized nature and the point that you made earlier, that there are no border security check when you're transferring money from one virtual asset provider to another wallet provider because of the decentralized nature. So we're yet to see what's going to happen with WazirX. Do you have any thoughts about it as to where it's going to head?
See, my ideas are not very far from where you are standing. But the way I say it, even if you look only at the theory, so whenever a new technology comes, whenever a new financial technology solution comes, okay, whenever something new comes, there are always vulnerabilities. There are always gaps which can be misused, or which can be abused. Abuse is the right word rather than misused. There are gaps which can be abused by perpetrators, by fraudsters, by hackers, by perpetrators, or all these people. It is very natural. So there's a regulatory cycle. In the regulatory cycle, what happens is, the stage one is when a new technology comes. It is not a good idea because our new technology is high risk. It is not a good idea to not let it come, because it is through new technologies that the society progresses, that productivity increases. So it is always a good idea to let new technologies come and let them proliferate in the market. But it's also a good idea to assess the risk involved in these new technologies on a very routine basis, on a very frequent basis, to understand where the gaps are. Okay. After that comes the second stage. You understand which are the gaps which are being misused or which are being abused by perpetrators. And then you go to the third stage, where you make actual regulations. You make regulations to plug those gaps. So now, because if you think about it, the entire world of crypto assets is only 15 years old. It's only 15 years old. What is 15 years? It is nothing. Okay.
Nothing.
It's because we are in a digital world that it looks like a long time. Otherwise, it is only 15 years old. So 15 years is not a decently large amount of time in which the assessment of risk can be done properly, and the gaps can be identified, and the gaps can be plugged. So this kind of hacks will keep happening. The fraud hacks, all of this will keep happening now. The idea is to understand which are the hacks, which are the frauds which are happening, and to take efforts to plug them. Now, plugging them can be done either by sovereign countries, okay, or through regulators, or by the industry itself. Now, you have to keep this much of benefit of doubt. I mean, these are my personal views to sovereign countries. You have to keep this much of benefit of doubt to the sovereign countries that all of this is new for them. Satoshi Nakamoto, whenever or whoever he or she was, okay, they were anti-establishment. Okay. So if you read the white paper, you'll get to know that they are anti-establishment. And now this is a new innovation which the establishment has to come face to face with. Now this innovation is cross-border. It does not respect borders. Okay. So even if one country comes up with some regulation, they can always move to another country and operate from another country. So if there is any comprehensive regulation, it has to be brought by all the countries in the world. Only then these regulations are effective. It will take time for the governments to come together and come up with this kind of regulations. So in the meantime, what the industry can do is, industry can learn from its own mistakes, because the industry knows these technical details the best. Okay. And they can develop RegTech. Now is the time for developing RegTech. Okay.
I agree.
Just the way you have developed, the technology, just the way it has evolved at breakneck pace, the RegTech, the SupTech also have to evolve in that pace, and self-regulatory mechanisms have to be put in place by the industry. That is the best thing that the industry can do till the time countries come together and come up with a comprehensive regulation. And if one country comes up with a regulation and the other country does not have a regulation, it does not solve any issue in any of the countries, because they don't respect borders.
I'm totally with you, sir. And this is something that I wrote in my book as well. And, this is something that I mention whenever incidences about hacks or the industry not being properly regulated comes, is that the New York Stock Exchange was formed in 1792. And the laws that we see now in the 21st century wasn't in place in the 18th century or 19th century.
Yeah.
The SEC came in the 1930s, 230 years after the establishment of New York Stock Exchange. So regulations take time. I do hope that it's not going to take 200 years for us to get the digital assets properly regulated, but it takes time. And I am so with you that I think that it's time for RegTech, especially for crypto. And shout out to our good friend Ari from TRM Labs. I believe that we already have got some very good RegTech applications out there for the crypto world, like TRM Labs, like chain analysis as well, that help to identify, when these frauds happen, where the money flow is going, how we can recover it. I know that TRM Labs does amazing work in the US with the US government, with the IRS, the equivalent of income tax department of the US. They do amazing work in tandem with them, the TRM Labs team. So I think I'm with you. I think it's time for RegTech in the crypto world as well to come in and probably find a way to accelerate the regulation, working in tandem with government officials such as yourself in a global way. Now, Smarakji, we spoke a lot about the financial frauds, which is something that you worked a lot in your professional career. And we spoke about crypto. Now I want to come back to the book that you wrote, which is Digital Fortunes. And both Smarakji and I got connected because of our mutual colleague, Venkat at CoinSwitch. So shout out to Venkat as well from CoinSwitch, who got us connected. And he told me that, we have a very high profile Indian civil services individual who has written a book on crypto. And Shiv, you have written a book on crypto in 2021, and you come from an international experience. You invite all these people from Bitwise, from other people from US in the crypto industry. You should go meet Smarakji. And that's why I came and met you. And you were so good that you gave me a signed copy of your book, which I still have. And I read it in my time. And that's why I wanted to invite you on the podcast as well. So we spoke about the risks of the crypto industry. And you've written a book, Digital Fortunes, which everybody should go and read. It's from Bloomsburg Publishing.
That's
Am I
right.
correct? And it's available on Amazon as well. So everybody should go and read, especially if you're from India. And for people outside India who are interested to build crypto businesses in India, because India is open now, you should read Digital Fortunes, which is written by Smarakji, which gives you a very international, but at the same time, an Indian outlook about the asset. Now, you explored the digital economy within that book, sir. What do you see as the most transformational aspects of this new economic paradigm? We need to hear some positive things as well, hopefully from your side.
Yeah. So Steve, my book, so Digital Fortunes, we have been talking a lot about financial fraud. So we have been talking mostly about the negative things, but Digital Fortunes is actually a very positive book. What the book basically talks about, what I have basically investigated in this book is this one issue of tech stocks and crypto assets, digital assets. What is the underlying value of these assets? Because a lot of people started asking me, what is the underlying value of Bitcoin? And then some of them started asking me, what is the underlying, why are some of the tech stocks, for example, the stock of Zomato, for example, to take an example, why is it priced higher than the stock of, if I recollect well, SCC Cement? Even though SCC Cement is such an old company, and it has positive cash flow, and Zomato when it was listed, at the time it was listed, it was a loss-making company. How come it has a value? It has a share price in the stock market which is more than that of SCC Cement, and how come Bitcoin has so much of value without having any underlying value? So these are questions which started coming to me, and this was also the time when I was interacting internationally also on with negotiators with tax negotiators, with regulatory negotiators in OECD, in various UN and in various international organizations from representing various countries. When I interacted with them, I got to know a lot about what is the value, what is the underlying value of digital assets, and tech stocks, and
Yeah.
and how do you perceive them. So this book is basically about that. So if I limit myself to let's say crypto assets, let's say digital assets, the underlying value is actually the digital assets. If we look at it, if we take out the utility coins, okay, now let us take out the utility coins. Let us take out the stable coins which are backed by some currency or gold. Okay,
It's
if we talk about purely decentralized digital assets, okay, why are they valuable? They are valuable because people think they're valuable. Okay, it is so simple. It is a so simple an answer, but it's very difficult to perceive. So in the entire book, I have tried to explain what is network effects, and before the digital economy came, how gold had a huge network effect, but and there was a network effect of there were some network effects, but it takes time to develop network effects. What the digital world did is that it increased connections manifold, uh, and exponentially it increased connections, due to which it was much easier to form network effects at a much shorter time, due to which it was much easier to form network effects, to drive value through network effects, and at the same time to disrupt it, because everything was happening at a much faster pace than before 1980s. Coming back to Bitcoin, okay, what I have told in my book is I have analyzed the number of users of Bitcoin. Okay, and also in the case of Ethereum, the number of users of Ethereum, the number of times Bitcoin is getting transacted on a daily basis, the number of times Ethereum is getting transacted on a daily basis, and based on that, what I have made a very subjective reading saying that they do have network effects. And at one point of time, the network effects are going to become so strong that they're going to reach a threshold where they may reach a gold standard. Okay, uh, that is one possibility, or the network effects may completely vanish. That is also a possibility. But going by the trends, that it is already that Bitcoin and Ethereum, they are already stores of value. Only these two digital assets. I'm not talking about any other digital assets.
Yeah.
Only those two decentralized, where there is no central administrative control, uh, with many ifs and buts. I'm saying that in the case of these two assets, it appears as if there is significant network effects which is driving their value. Okay, and as and when more and as and when one more user joins Bitcoin's network, the value of Bitcoin will increase exponentially. N number of users join Bitcoin's network, it will increase exponentially n number of times. So as and when the user base increases, the number of transactions increase, Bitcoin is going to take on the form of a digital gold. So that is the argument that I have finally arrived at in the book, after discussing a lot about network effects, giving a lot of examples from companies about how network effects operates.
No, that's perfect, sir. I read your book. I took my time to read your book, and that's why it took us a while to schedule this podcast as well, because I wanted to read the book fully. But you are so right. There are some fundamental indicators out there that help you to make sense as to what is the value. A lot of people do not take the time to actually read what is Bitcoin or Ethereum and just analogize it to something else and create a conclusion or hear what their other asset class experts say about this new asset class, which is because of their ignorance and lack of knowledge, and then say, this person said it is this, so that's why it is this. But what about your own thinking? So I'm glad that you, as a representative of the Indian government, have done your own research and gave your own personal analysis on what these crypto assets is. And I'm totally in agreement with you. I see Bitcoin. This is my personal views, of course. I see Bitcoin as a better version of gold. Gold, like you said, it's well, at least back in the day, it used to be very decentralized. in terms of its pricing as well. Now, if somebody looks at how the gold bullion market works, they know that there is a lot of power that is within the centers of London that price the gold bullion market on a daily basis. While the discovery of gold is still very decentralized, the pricing of it might be a somewhat different story if somebody does a very fair assessment of how the pricing of the gold bullion market works. But Bitcoin is a decentralized network. There is no question about it. And this decentralized network has not been hacked. I mean, recently we had the Microsoft blue screen incident. We didn't have Windows PC working for like so many hours.
Right.
Bitcoin, despite being an open source, decentralized peer-to-peer network, has not had a downtime in 14 years. That's a big computer science achievement right there. We've got banking applications that are having their network upgrade for like hours on any best of its day as well. Bitcoin is an open source, decentralized network. So many upgrades have happened, but after every 10 minutes, new block gets created and transaction gets flowed. So one can't deny the innovation of that decentralized network. And I tell my friends now within the industry and a lot of the TradFi folks as well, this is something that I've shared with you, that the use case of Bitcoin, which is more as a decentralized asset that is good for a sovereign individual to hold because it protects you from, I guess, certain failed fiat currencies, like in the form of, one can argue about Zimbabwean dollars, the hyperinflation that we had in Zimbabwe, what we experience, I guess, in Argentina as well with the, year over year, 100% plus inflation, which is decreasing the purchasing power of their currency. So I guess countries where they don't have the ability to manage their currencies well. Of course, there are countries that manage their currency well, like India, they manage their currency well. Australia does it well. US does it well. But for countries, out of the 190 countries, probably half of them do not know how to manage their currencies well. So that's why they either depend on US dollar or they depend upon, in the case of Central African Republic countries like Ivory Coast and all, they depend on euro or France for their, currency, and then they pay Cinerage. So for those countries that don't have that, I can't find another better word, but the economic intellect to manage their fiat currencies, Bitcoin is a decentralized solution. So just like for an individual to protect their purchasing power against their national currencies that are failed, in some cases like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, for countries as well, in a world where we do not want to be dependent on certain nations to protect our reserves, we use gold. Similarly, they should start forming a view of using Bitcoin as that reserve. And we are already seeing El Salvador being one country. Donald Trump, who could be the next US president, is now, talking in public saying that we're going to use and we're going to create a fund. The US government is going to create a fund called the Bitcoin Strategic Fund, and we're going to buy a lot of Bitcoins now. We want to be the country that holds the most number of Bitcoins, which they already do, by the way, but not just as a strategic reserve. So I think this narrative of countries holding Bitcoin in their central banking reserves, just like how they hold gold, is going to get more, prevalence within the industry. Do you have any views on that?
Yes, I do have some views on that. I think, it's been only 15 years that Bitcoin has been in existence. But the trajectory of Bitcoin has been much faster than the trajectory of gold. The acceptability, yes. the way gold got acceptability all over the world. And yes, Bitcoin has some advantages over gold. It has some advantages over the US dollar also. Its main advantage of gold is that it can be divided into any number of units. Okay, it can be it is divisible. It is infinitely divisible. The one Bitcoin can be divided into thousands, millions, or trillions of small pieces, and they can be transacted. So that is how it is better than gold. Very simply talking about it. the US dollar is an anchor currency, mostly because it's a reserve currency, number one, and number two, it's also the most liquid currency in the world. Why I said that it's a liquid currency? Because it is used the most number of times for international trade. Okay.
True.
But if we look at the geopolitics that has been happening the last 20 to 25 years, and specifically for in the last 2 to 3 years, the US has been the US government has been using US dollars, the US dollar system for imposing sanctions on some countries. Okay. So these sanctions will ensure that the sanctioned country stays outside the dollar network. Now the size of the size of the area which is outside the dollar network on today's date looks very big. It looks very big mostly because Russia is big. Russia is like it takes up a large part of the globe. Okay.
Sure.
Now, but having said that, there are now multiple countries which are outside the US dollar network, the international trade, but they definitely have to engage in trade finance, and Bitcoin becomes a very tempting solution for them to engage in international finance. Okay. For example, in fact, I was looking at some of the statistics recently. Now, this is the latest statistics of 2023. About 3% of the Bitcoin mining happens in Iran. 3% or 4% of the Bitcoin mining, it happens in Iran. A lot of taxes have been imposed on Iran by the US, but Bitcoin mining is also happening in Iran. Okay. So there's a lot of potential for use of Bitcoin, but still it is not being used. Okay. The reason is probably it's volatility. The reason is its volatility. I was looking at a couple of research papers to understand how this volatility can go down. As of date, the volatility of Bitcoin is less than the stock price of Netflix, I'm told. Okay, the volatility of Netflix. Okay, but that is not enough. The volatility has to even go down a little bit further. And that will happen when when more number of small users do small value transactions in Bitcoin. When that happens, there is a chance that the volatility will come down significantly, and that is when Bitcoin will increasingly be used for clearing international trade or transactions. And when that happens, we will know that Bitcoin has actually come of age, and that may happen. And when that happens, it will happen very suddenly. That can very I don't know what kind of results it will lead to, but the way I visualize it is, if Bitcoin gets adopted, it will get adopted very suddenly and very fast. The adoption rate will be very fast as an international currency if it gets adopted, and along with that, the US dollars power, international power, it will go down drastically. That is the way I look at it.
Yes. That's why a lot of people, especially in the US, are suggesting that we should accelerate this, because then US would have a first mover advantage in holding most of the Bitcoin out there. Because they know that after World War II, US became the world reserve currency and they used it to their advantage. And yes, you are right. In the last 2 years, we got to see how US dollar system could be weaponized against certain countries by their will, unanimously, if we may say. So there are merits to this network, and it's all about educating, I guess, the authorities of each country as well, that this is your friend. So I'm glad that you think the same way. And if I may just add about the volatility factor. So I did some research recently. Turkish lira, we know Turkey is going through its own civil unrest and its own economic unrest. Nevertheless, Turkey is a massive economy. Like, out of the 190 odd countries, Turkey would be in the top 25 economies in the world. Bitcoin is actually less volatile than Turkish lira. So Bitcoin is increasingly becoming less volatile as years go past by. And now with the SEC approved Bitcoin ETF issuers in the form of BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Bitwise. We've got all these massive, $1 trillion asset manager who are just holding Bitcoin as in the form of ETF. We're probably going to see even lesser volatility, at least for Bitcoin, as the years goes pass by. And then you're right, sir. I mean, a lot of people give the example that China has banned Bitcoin. Yes, they have banned Bitcoin, but 10% of mining still happens in China. I was shocked that you told me. I wasn't aware that Iran does 3% of the Bitcoin mining. 10% of the mining happens in mainland China, despite it being banned. Even the mining of Bitcoin is banned there, but still, according to the IP addresses of where all the mining locations are, 10% gets mined in China. The GCC belt, UAE, Kingdom of Oman, and increasingly there are talks by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where actually the kingdoms are investing billions of dollars to set up the infrastructure to mine Bitcoin. And I know you know this, but for our viewers, mining Bitcoin is a very capital-intensive investment, which is different to Ethereum, where you can just buy Ethereum on the market and start securing the network because it's proof of stake. So the fact that these kingdoms are not necessarily buying Bitcoin, but are actually spending money to build the infrastructure to mine Bitcoin, just like how people invest money to build the infrastructure to mine gold, says that they are thinking about Bitcoin in a very future-oriented way for decades to come. So hopefully we're going to see some more positive things coming out of India, at least for Bitcoin as an asset. I hope so. Okay,
Good. Very, very interesting ideas.
Yeah.
And I'll also tell you one more thing. There's something interesting
Yes.
that you said, that in US now they have got this idea of stockpiling Bitcoins, if I may use that
Yes.
word. That
Yes.
they're planning to stockpile Bitcoin because they want to have the first mover advantage when Bitcoin becomes the anchor currency, when it replaces the US the US dollar as the principal anchor currency.
Yes.
But if
Yeah.
they're planning to do that, they will be actually trying to game Satoshi Nakamoto. So if you go back to the white paper of Nakamoto, his very idea was that he wanted to create a currency which cannot be controlled by any central bank.
True.
And when Bitcoin, if and when Bitcoin becomes the anchor currency, I somehow feel that every central banker will try to game it. Every central banker will try to stockpile a lot of Bitcoin so that they think that they can control the price. That possibility is there, but Bitcoin may turn out as the first real international store of value. That possibility is
Absolutely.
also there.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad we think alike, sir. And I'm so glad that it's you in your position who think that way. Because it is so true, right? The game theory, the economic incentive of Bitcoin, the game theory that is involved over there, the perfect competition between different stakeholders to find a value, but not enough of it, so that if it becomes centralized, it loses all of its value. It's fascinating. So that's why, I'm glad, sir, that we both think the same way. Now, let's talk a little bit about blockchain technology as well, sir. There is the crypto aspect of blockchain technology, and then there is an aspect of the technology that has got nothing to do with crypto. And unfortunately, a lot of bad image comes towards the technology as well, because it's associated with the 14,000 odd other cryptos outside Bitcoin that doesn't necessarily have any value. So coming to blockchain technology, and you're in the taxation system of India, what potential do you see for blockchain technology in improving transparency and efficiency in India's tax system?
Steve, I will not talk about anything specific to the Indian tax system, but if I talk about tax administrations,
Yes.
generally about tax administrations, there's a lot of potential for integrating blockchain technology into tax administrations to make them more efficient. So, to give one very simple example, you might have heard about. I'm sure you have heard about money mules.
Yes.
Not money mules. I would call that mule account. Okay, you must have heard about mule account. Now,
Okay.
why do we have these mule accounts? We have mule accounts because KYCs have been stolen. Okay, so stolen KYC, I think stolen KYC is, I think, or stolen identity, I think, is an issue all over the world in many countries.
Yes.
Blockchain technology promises some kind of a solution for this issue, so that stolen KYC does not remain a problem. Secondly, if you look at the VAT systems all over the world, or if you look at the GST system in countries where GST is there, you will see that one major issue, one major problem that they face is of carousel fraud. They call it differently in different countries. What happens is typically in carousel fraud is that, let's say let's say I'm a trader. I make a fake sale to trader B, then trader B makes a fake sale to trader C. C makes a fake sale to trader D. Now B, C, and D, they are fictitious entities. Okay. Again, these entities have been formed by stealing the KYC of some individual who doesn't know about it. Okay.
Understood.
So this entire process, okay, it can be validated using blockchain. Blockchain-based validation is much easier to check and cross-check, and it removes the necessity of audits. And whenever the VAT audit happens or GST audit happens, the process itself is so grueling that it reduces the ease of doing business. Okay, so the ease of doing business can be improved by reducing the time taken for audit, and how it can be done by ensuring that the entire process is validated using a blockchain. Now, this sounds very, very good in theory, but I'm looking forward to anyone coming up with some good pilot projects. I've heard that Brazil, the tax administration of Brazil has tried to implement something, and Argentina also tried to implement some of these things. I do not know how well they have fared, but all of these are happening now. The adoption of the technology is happening. I'm sure because of the potential of the technology, it is going to go a long way, and especially in countering mule accounts, encountering stolen KYCs and cyber crimes. They have good potential. One more area that I see is preserving privacy of taxpayers. What is happening is that taxpayers, they give a lot of data in the income tax return to the tax department. Okay, a lot of data. And all of that data, they give it to the tax department in a fiduciary capacity. You go to any tax administration in the world, all of them, they follow this routine because a lot of data is given to them. So they hold this data in a fiduciary capacity. Like, for example, in India, under the Income Tax Act, there is a section 138 of the Income Tax Act that says that that basically indicates that the data that is being collected from the taxpayer, it is being held in a fiduciary capacity, and it cannot be given to any other authority or any other individual except by the approval of a very senior officer. Okay, sure. To give you an example. Now, this is creating a dual problem. First problem is that the taxpayer, the data that the taxpayer is giving, the taxpayer is not sure how the data is being used, whether it is getting leaked out or not. Okay, all the income, because the taxpayer is giving a lot of data about his income, about his wealth, about their income, their wealth, many data. If I, as an individual, have an access to, let's say, Australia's tax database, I will know which are the people whose kids I have to kidnap so as to make some money. I know which are the people I target for ransomware attack.
Yeah.
I know which are the people I attack for sextortion, because I know these are the people who have a lot of money. Okay.
Yeah.
So the taxpayer is also generally worried that a lot of my data is going on to the authorities. Secondly, the tax department, it is unable to share all of the data with regulators, with law enforcement authorities, because it is held in the fiduciary capacity. Now, if we put it in the blockchain, if we make it blockchain enabled, okay, ideally what can happen is the taxpayer is giving all of this data in a package, okay, which cannot be accessed by the tax department, but which the tax department can access whenever it needs to access specific data. So the taxpayer can see when the access was done and how the access was done and for what purpose the access was done. Was it for a risk assessment work? Was it for any anonymized survey? Okay, the taxpayer can see, and the taxpayer can be assured that their privacy is being maintained. their data is not being given to any X5 with whom they have a marital dispute, or with whom there's an alimony dispute. Okay, their data is not being given to anyone who may potentially blackmail them. So the taxpayer is also happy. The tax department, whenever it is requested for any data by any LEA or a LEA for that specific taxpayer, okay, the tax department can allow access to that LEA to make specific access to that data, and all of that will be recorded. All of that can be seen by all the three parties that this access was done, and it was because of a specific purpose that our law enforcement authority has accessed that data. And in case of regulators, the regulators can collect anonymized data from here.
Yeah.
Okay, of which can help them in understanding income trends or wealth trends. In the case of regulators or academicians like you can collect the data and use it. On today's date, minimizing that data and using it is also very difficult, very, very challenging without a proper trace back, proper validation and trace back. So a blockchain system may help in solving this problem also.
Sir, thanks a lot for sharing those problems that you think where blockchain can play a big role. One of the grateful things that have happened is that a lot of industry watches the Proof of Work podcast, and I have seen people actually partnering up because they've heard something on the Proof of Work podcast by a guest. And I'm pretty sure out there, all the layer one blockchain partnership people that watch the Proof of Work podcast, now you can hear somebody from the government of India that is saying that if you've got a solution for KYC, if you've got a solution for privacy of data for users, I guess India is open to collaborate in these blockchain technology offerings if they can provide a meaningful solution for it.
Yes, there are departments in Government of India and also in RBI which have sandboxes which are looking into this. If there are solutions, the administrators are very much willing to look at them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. From the top of my mind, something really comes quickly, but yes, it's theoretical in my head. We'll see how it goes. But soul-bound tokens, which is a token standard within Ethereum, what it does is that if you've got a soul-bound token attached to a wallet, that becomes your identity, because that is not transferable. That is permanently attached to your wallet, and that acts as a KYC for any interaction. So that is one, I guess, a technical innovation within Ethereum, soul-bound tokens that can be applied for KYC. And the other one, of course, is something that we discussed was zero-knowledge proofs, on how zero-knowledge proofs can be used to ensure that you have shared your data to that zero-knowledge proof entity, whether it could be in a contract or whatever, but you share all that data. And through that, then, any data that requires sharing, you actually do not need to share the personal identifiable information. If something comes as, whether you have got more than $100,000 or not, let's say if that's the question, if you do, the answer would come as yes or no, rather than actually sharing with you how much money that you actually have. So zero knowledge proof is, of course, another cryptographic technology that can be used. But of course, theory is one thing, and seeing the application of it and how to integrate it with legacy system, that's another story. But I'm sure for the technologists out there in the crypto world that are listening to this podcast, you should definitely, see ways to get connected with the RBI sandbox and other institutions of India to see how blockchain technology can help the Indian public administration without any involvement of the crypto world, because there is a blockchain element that has got nothing to do with crypto that is very innovative in its own way. Now, I know we've spoken a lot, which is always good, which means that we're having a very good discussion, and time is not always friends with us. So I want to close it off by asking you a last question, Smarakji. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's That's a bit um a bit of a difficult question to answer. Um, uh, what I would say is that okay, fine. I actually do not have much regrets of about what I have been doing, but yes, my writing career took a lot of time to take off. Okay,
Cool.
so it's probably because I wrote. I have been writing along with working along with the day job, and I have never taken much of a leave. So probably I should have taken long breaks and interacted more with people and written more stories, which more stories. I should have written more. Um, what I feel is that the output that I have come up with is not substantial, and my writing career did take off decently, but it took off in my 30s. It should have taken off in my 20s. Probably I should have taken a 2 to 3 years of break from service and devoted some time to writing. That I did not do back then.
Got it. Got it. No, thanks for sharing it. I appreciate it. Now, Smarakji, these are all the long form questions that we have. But in the Proof of Work podcast, we've got a very final segment, which is generally our guest and mine favorite segment, which is the famous rapid fire round, where I'm going to ask you questions that only warrants 1 or 2 word responses or a yes or no response. And you can pass some of the question as well. So if you have time, 5 minutes, we'll do the rapid fire question.
Okay, so
Cool. Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin,
Bitcoin. Tea or coffee?
coffee,
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
have time on my side, be extremely lucky.
Got it. Got it. Your favorite science fiction movie of all time?
Star Wars,
Star Wars? Cool. Cats or dogs?
dogs.
Dogs. What's your go-to comfort food?
That would be chena poro. It's a local dish in Odisha, made of
Got it.
cheese.
Got it. I need to try it. What's your secret talent that only your loved ones would know, but not your friends and colleagues?
I'll pass that question.
Cool. Okay. Um, what's your go-to karaoke song? Song that you love singing.
It's Rinjhim Gire, the old Hindi song, Rinjhim Gire Sawan.
Got it. Yes. Cool. Um, according to you, what is the role of intuition in making decisions?
Intuition has a major role to play in making decisions. Uh, uh, whenever you face a situation where there are multiple factors or there are multiple uncertainties, it is always best to go with intuition rather than make any random calculations.
If you have the ability to time travel only twice, which means do the time travel and then come back if you want, where would you go and why? You can
I'll
go in the
go,
past or in the future, wherever.
I'll go to the I'll go to the war field where Genghis Khan was marching, because I believe that is one of the most epoch incidents in the world. I'm fascinated by Genghis Khan and the way he conquered the entire landmass of Eurasia.
Wonderful. Human brain or artificial intelligence?
Human brain, any day.
Space exploration or ocean exploration?
Space exploration.
Mind or machine?
Mind.
Creativity or logic?
Creativity.
Data privacy or data sharing?
Data privacy.
So digital identity or anonymity?
Anonymity.
Global impact or local impact?
Global impact.
So now there's going to be some funny questions now, Smarakji. So choose to be playful if you want to. Do you believe in aliens?
No, I don't. I do not really believe in aliens. I think we are all alone in this universe.
Yeah, got it.
Yes,
Superman or Batman?
mm, okay, so your question is Superman or Batman?
Yes.
Superman. Superman, because Batman, Batman has absolutely no powers. There's no point. There's no fun in being Batman.
Got it. Burgers or pizza?
Pizzas.
Flying or teleportation?
I don't get you.
So do you want to fly or do you want to teleport?
Teleport.
Like that
Teleport.
Star Trek? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to teleport. Flying is again boring. you have to get out of flying.
Got it. Dinosaurs or dragons?
Dragons, they can fly.
Yeah.
And also they can,
Me too.
and also they can be tamed. Some dinosaurs could fly, but dragons can be tamed, as we see in the movies.
Sure. And they can have that fire breath as well.
Yeah.
If we want to best, yeah. Marvel Comics or DC Comics?
I think the answer is very clear. Marvel Comics.
Marvel Comics, cool. Awesome. My last question then, sir. If you can name a car, any name to a car, what would you name that car?
Dodo.
Why?
Because it's extinct. So it's one of...
Oh, Dodo. Yes, Dodo. The bird Dodo.
It's one of a...
Yes. That's true. Smarakji, thanks a lot for coming on the Proof of Work podcast. This was a delight. We spent 2 hours talking, which means that hopefully you enjoyed the conversation as well. How was your Proof of Work podcast experience?
I loved it. I
Thank you, sir.
Loved it. And thanks a lot for having me here. I absolutely loved interacting with you. The way I like interacting with you every time we have met. I remember we keep talking for 3 hours, 4 hours at a stretch. And today also, I now realize that we are past 2 hours.
Yes. Yeah, but honestly, we can go for long, I know. But I know you're a busy person. So that's why only 2 hours. But if we can, I would have you for 3-4 hours and just continue talking about so many abstract topics about digital currency itself. But because this is your first appearance on the Proof of Work podcast, I wanted to give the forum to introduce you. So that's why we spend the first hour talking about yourself and then the next hour talking about your book and digital currencies. But next time for round 2 of your, visit on the Proof of Work podcast, we would dwell deeper into your thoughts about blockchain technology into digital assets. And I'm sure our viewers are going to be really excited to hear more about it. So thanks again, Smarakji, for coming on the Proof of Work podcast. I hope all of you guys liked it. Smarakji is available on LinkedIn. So if you want to approach Smarakji on LinkedIn, he's very approachable. You should connect with him on LinkedIn. I'll share a link with all of you about Smarakji. And I'll also share a link of his recent book, Digital Fortunes, which all of you should check it out. And some of his existing books, like Hawala Agent, is a must read. So you should definitely check out his existing books, which are all available on Amazon as well. So I'll share all those links with you. Smarakji, again, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
Same here, Ziv.